Right, hi guys, this is the second video of the flies that I tied on Thursday. This is the Parachute Adams. If anybody remembers, the fly I tied on Thursday night was tied on the size 12, but I have actually got some dry fly hackles that will suit a size 14, so I'll do that on a size 14. Let's get the hook. So this is a BHC, British Hook Company. This is a 102, which is a strong dry foot. So that's the size 12 in the hook, that's the size 14. So as before, we use the black nano silk. Just catch that in, and just a tad of trusty super glue. Just to make sure everything is secure. And like that. So just binding that down over the super glue. This nano silk is incredibly strong. No, it's not silk, it's a synthetic material. Anyway, binding the thread down just to the start of the bend. And just remove any surplus. And the first thing is to tie in the tail, which is a mixture of sort of game cock hackles, just a small pinch of that, mixed in with a similar pinch of grizzle hackles, grizzle hackle fibres. And we just align the tips. And just roll them in your fingers if you can, just to mix up those fibres. Just making sure the tips are more or less in line. And then gauging them for length, so it's approximately the length of the shank of the hook. So put that in position. Pinch and loop, and then just check that it's all right for length. So I'm going to encourage those fibres back a bit. About right, and then just going to bind those down. And remove the waist, and then go back up to the start of the bend. And then just a few fibres there. The body, I've just got a mixture of guard hairs and alpaca, grey alpaca. It's just a nice combination. You got the spikiness of the hair mask and the softness of the alpaca. Just put in the blender and spun up. So just dubbing on a small amount of dubbing, catching in so those fibres hopefully will be locked in, and then we can then tighten up the dubbing rope. And so I'm just going to tighten it up as I go, and trying to encourage a little bit of a taper down the hook shank to about 2/3 of the way down. And then tie everything back, and then we're going to catch in the wing post material, which is the same as the black nap that we did, and this is just the Antron, and the crease from the card I'll just use to act as an anchor point. A couple of tight turns, and then we can put it all together. A few turns underneath, a few turns at the back, and then we're going to be wrapping round and up the hook shank, which can be quite fiddly. If you've got a gallows tool, then it makes life a little bit easier. At the workshop, what we'll do is I'll show you how I can make it easier for those people that have got a rest on the side of their vise, their tying table rather. It just helps to, works very similar to a gallows tool. It just holds the hackle post just a bit tighter, and you can use two hands then to wrap, because the tension is created by the hackle pliers on a bit of wire attached to the post. So we need to come up a little bit more than we did for the black gnat, because we've got two hackles to put in, not too much more, and then just going to wrap that back down again to the bottom of the post, and then leaving the thread at the back ready to tie in the two hackles. So I've got the gamecock hackle and the grizzlecock hackle, and I'm going to be putting more turns of the game because it's a bit finer, so that's the one I'll tie in first. So that'll be the one I wind last, and as we did with the black parachute gnat, I'm just removing a few fibres more on the right hand side, and then I'm going to trap that in so that the part of the fibres at the left hand side are just slightly longer than the length of the post. So I'll just get a couple of turns in there, locking that in place, and then do the same with the grizzle. Again, a little bit shorter on the right hand side. Offer that up. And then just making sure that we bind those fibres, those stalks down, coming towards the eye. And then return the thread. And now we've got to wind the thread up the post and go round right to the top, and then when you're back down again, it's a little bit easier this time around because it's got a bit of strength, so you can wind it down. So once you've got to that position, then we need to dub on the rest of the body to cover the hackle stalks and the thread. So I'm going to take the thread back to the eye position and just dubbing in a small quantity of the Adams mix. So we wind the dubbing back to the base of the wing and then clear off any amount of excess. And now we've got to tie in or wind the hackle, so I will actually wind those in a vertical position around the post, which now will be horizontal. So we need to put the hackle pliers on. I'm going to be taking the first turn where the thread is, and then any subsequent turns we're going below the previous turn. And then making my way down, so that's 4 turns. Just get one more in, and then we can then bring the thread a couple of turns in underneath and one over the top, and that will hold that hackle stalk. And then we'll do the same with this. We'll wind that so that the subsequent turns go beneath each other. Because this is slightly denser with the game hackle, I'm just going to put one less turn in, and then take a couple of turns underneath, one over the top, just one more for good measure, and then we can trim off the stalks. Okay, and then finally the whip finish, which we whip finish underneath the wings, right up against the shank of the hook. I'll just slide that down, and then finally one more. That more. Just lock that in place with a little bit of varnish. And we're going to turn it back to the vertical. You can separate those out and just pull down a little bit, which will just tighten everything up, and then finally trim it to whatever length you want. Done it a little bit long, so you can always trim it back when you're fishing with it. There's just a couple of fibres that are trapped underneath, so I'll just trim that all flat, basically so the fly sits on the surface and isn't distorted by any odd fibres. So that's the Parachute Adams, and the next fly we'll be tying it will be the Muddler Minnow.